I'm going to talk to you about Future Day Goes Global, Technology as a Solution to Global Health Problems. And I want to begin by acknowledging that in 2015, this is a niche subject. That's the reason there are only 80 of us in the room. But you can imagine that both components here, global health and the future, will eventually grow in importance so that they will be of interest to practically everyone. And so we wouldn't have just 80, we might have 800 or 8,000 in some future situation where the importance of global health and technology in the future was more widely understood. Today is Valentine's Day. Now, Valentine's Day is really important. It's not a holiday. You don't get the day off. If you think about it for a moment, it's probably good you don't get the day off because of all sorts of pressures that would be created if you actually had the whole day to work on cards and presents and flowers and stuff. But it's a really important day. So I'm going to talk to you about another day, which is Future Day, that almost certainly none of you have heard of, but Future Day is March 1st, and you're living in Edmonton. And believe it or not, that's important because Edmonton is the only place on the planet that's actually celebrating Future Day as an entire city because, as you know, there's a Light the Bridge program for the high-level bridge. And you can send to the city a proposal to put particular colors on the bridge for a particular reason. And so we've done that for Future Day, March 1st. And on March 1st, you will notice that the bridge is orange and green. And that's because those are the colors of Future Day. And visual images are important. So, this guy, most of you don't realize that one aspect of your living in Canada, when you go to a city, there are lots of stuffed animals made by Aurora Gifts, and if you get one, there will not be a picture on the internet anywhere. If you do a Google search, you won't be able to find a picture of the stuffed animal that you have gotten, whereas if you purchase stuffed animals in the US, they're all online. So it's kind of exciting. We assume that our lives are such that all the general stuff in our lives, it's online, it's all online. And when you encounter some important component of your life, like the fact that there are parts of the city where, of course, there are more stuffed animals than real animals, and that they are, you can't find a picture of them anywhere. So when I was growing up, there was a circle game called This is a Sad and Serious Occasion. So the young people would sit in a circle, look each other in the eye, say this is a sad and serious occasion, and if you laughed, you had to leave the circle, and so that is not online. That phrase is not online. There are other much lamer games that are, but that one's not. So now what about this occasion? Is this a sad and serious occasion? Well, my impact on you, the audience, is very much dependent upon whether this is a sad and serious occasion. Because people who present to you negative messages, two things happen. First of all, you don't enjoy that as much. And secondly, you don't really trust that person. If somebody gives you a negative message, you begin to question whether the guy really or the woman really knows what they're talking about. Whereas a positive message makes you feel better and you begin to trust the person just because of the positive message. So I'm kind of naturally inclined to give you a positive message. The thing that I'm talking about today could go either way. And the course that I teach on technology and the future of medicine, the most exciting aspect of the course is we are not passive victims of the future. We can help shape the future. So I'm going to give you a rather positive view of what the future of medicine can be, and you sitting in these seats can help make that so. And if you're really interested in the other side, on Future Day, I'm giving another talk, which is a sort of doomsday talk. So the opposite of what I tell you today, you can come and hear about the worst possible outcomes on March 1st if you wish to. So what about global health? As you've heard, the major disease burden is chronic, non-communicable diseases. More than 2/3 of global health burden is made up of things like depression, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, cancer, kidney disease, hypertension. A lot of these have a lifestyle background. And in our health education, we probably don't spend enough time on lifestyle issues because a lot of these things can be prevented. They can be made less likely through lifestyle changes with emphasis on exercise, healthy eating, so on, healthy aging. These chronic diseases, many of them lead to organ failure. Transplantation is one treatment, but it reaches an unfortunately small fraction of the people who need these therapies. It reaches approximately 10%, so if you need a heart transplant, kidney transplant, there's probably one chance in 10 that you will actually receive it. And so one of the advantages of technology is that it is possible to raise that number, the proportion of people that we will reach 10 to 100-fold so that we can actually reach everybody who needs the therapy. Now, what is it going to cost? The exciting thing is that has not been determined. And you might say, but this is a deterministic world and the cost is X. But I can tell you that in the political world, there are many things that will determine what the costs of these new therapies are and who pays. And that, again, is a part of the future you can help shape. By political advocacy, you can decide whether stem cell-generated organs are going to be free and accessible to everyone or just something that the enormously rich can have. And the same for xenotransplantation. Many of you may not be very keen on the idea of getting an organ from a pig, but there are humanized pigs now, pigs that are made highly compatible with the human beings, and they're looking like a very good source of organs for humans. And the third possibility is the bioartificial organ, that you mix human cells with various filters and so on and create a kind of mechanical biological device. Now, it's not a matter of deciding between the three of those. It's kind of a race, a regulatory and scientific race. Which of those three will reach the consumer first? But we can add them all. We can use them all. So we can use stem cell generated organs and xenotransplantation organs from animals and bioartificial organs. All of those can be modalities for the future, and they're not limited the way transplantation is now. There will never be enough donors for transplantation to reach everybody who needs it. So the other thing about this technology relationship to health is that it's not linear. If you think where technology has taken us up to now and sort of think, well, if it keeps going like that, that's not the way to think about it. It's an exponential curve. This curve, which is known as Moore's law or the law of accelerating returns, you may regard it as only applying to computing, but it actually applies to your life in general. Sort of technology impact on your life, and in particular, technology impact on health. And it predicts some very interesting things, that in 2029, computers will be as smart as individual humans. And in 2045, computers will be as smart as the entire aggregate human race. When that occurs, computers, machines, will control the future agenda of the world. And you can only understand what's going on and participate in the management of what's going on if you merge or cooperate with those computers in some way. This is called the technological singularity. And it applies to health, it applies to everything you might think of. And if you're sitting here thinking, I won't see that, you're wrong, because that's only 30 years. If you think you're not going to be alive in 30 years, you're wrong about that, because longevity is changing. Everyone in this room will be alive in 30 years. So the things I'm talking about, you will see if they happen or not. And if you say, well, is there any evidence now? Well, you get evidence every day. You remember in the past, when you would make a phone call, people hardly ever make phone calls these days, but in the past when you made a phone call and you reached an automated attendant, remember how unsatisfactory that was. You always were frustrated by it. Now you're not frustrated. Now when you reach an automated attendant, usually they do a better job than an actual human being would. And so there are many other things in that direction that indicate that indeed machines are becoming better than human beings at many tasks. So this idea of the technological singularity has an analogy with the phenomena around the black holes talked about in physics, where there's an area of uncertainty and you can't tell what's going to happen after that. And I think this is very true. After 2045, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. But in a utopian sense, you can imagine something. You can imagine that the world becomes very green, the oxygen tension in the atmosphere goes up, the impurities, the toxins go down in the oceans and in the air. And because you're not as smart as the machines running things, you don't know exactly how that's been done, but it's kind of nice that the world has become a better place. And so that's one thing that could happen. Now you can be excused for not knowing anything about the singularity before 2011. But in February 2011, two things occurred to bring it into the mainstream. First of all, it was on the cover of Time magazine. And secondly, in the game show, the TV game show Jeopardy, the computer Watson beat the top human contenders over 3 consecutive days. Now this was not just a fluke or an accident. The computer got better and better over these 3 days. And it was clear on the third day that not only had it beat the top human contenders, but computers were now better for all time at the game of Jeopardy than humans could ever be, just had it already occurred before with chess and checkers and many other things. And if you think of the particular things that are most special in your own life, your skills and so on, and the talents that you have, it is very likely that there are already computers doing some of the things that you do. And over the next 20 to 30 years, we will face something like a permanent vacation where there will be support for human beings, but there probably won't be much work because humans are not as good as the robots will be at most of the tasks that humans do today. And so another way to think about this is the common error would be the red lines here, or the orange lines that just keep things going linearly. Those would be the bad predictions, underestimating the future, and that is not what is going to happen. What is going to happen is the green line there. And so 2045 is going to be so remarkably different from your life today that you actually cannot conceive of what it will be like. But what we predict is you might have in the course of your lifetime between now and then, like 5 different jobs. And the 3rd, 4th, and 5th job you might have are jobs we don't even have names for now. We don't even have the concept of those jobs. Some of them might be very satisfying, beyond the satisfaction of any job you ever imagined having. Because in Maslow's pyramid of needs, the robots are going to take all the low-hanging fruit in the bottom part, right? And the self-actualization at the very top of Maslow's pyramid of needs, that's where most human beings will end up. So if poetry, novel writing, creativity is your thing, that might be the last thing that we offload to, machines around us. So the technological singularity is also related to Peter Diamandis' idea of abundance. Every morning when you wake up, maybe the first thing you think about is unfulfilled reality. There are things you want that you cannot have. And that's just the way life is. This is talking about the opposite of that. That the price of valuable things approaches 0, that almost anything you want, you can have, any experience, you can experience through virtual reality, which is as good as or better than real reality, can be experienced with friends. So suddenly, in this world, anything you want, you can have. That's maybe an idea you never thought about before. It's a very shocking idea. And on March 1st, I'll be talking about the opposite of this idea, which, an absolutely terrible world, which is also possible. But we have it within our power to shape what the future will be. It's not that there's some big entities out there. They're actually, just as Stephen Mandel said, most people are thinking of like the next 4 years, and that's it. There are very few people thinking about the next 30 years. If you're one of those people, by talking about it, by discussing, you can help shape what the next 30 years will be. It could include such things as automatic translation. We think that by 2021, everybody will be able to speak to everybody else, no problem. And what about medicine? Well, one thing is clear, that it is quite likely that all the diseases we know today could be prevented, eliminated, but we can have more diseases and a much less satisfactory medical situation than we have today, but where all the diseases are man-made, bioterrorism-oriented diseases that by definition are almost impossible to treat. That is possible. But it's also possible that we'll somehow avoid that and end up in a circumstance where what is left for health workers are 2 huge areas so big you may not have even conceived of them before. One is human enhancement, not just physical enhancement, but including moral and spiritual enhancement. Would you like to be better? And how would you like to be better? There's probably no end to the ways in which you would like to be better. And that's not where it ends, because the other thing that health workers could also do is improve society to promote health and well-being. So There's a tremendous amount to do, even if we eliminate all diseases. And it brings to mind the idea of the social responsibility of health. And social responsibility of medicine. Now, Rudolf Virchow in 1848, the age of 27. I think a lot of you are 27, have recently been, or going to be 27. Anyway, almost everything, every quote from him is stuff that he wrote when he was 27. Now, he lived to be 80. He had a fantastic birthday party at the age of 80. So they often show a picture of this old guy with a gray beard paired with these quotes that he wrote when he was 27. But it's important to think about writing something like this yourself that might influence as many people as this has. It is the curse of humanity that it learns to tolerate even the most horrible situations by habituation. Physicians are the natural attorneys of the poor. Think of what that means. And the social problems should be largely solved by them. That's a very grand statement. I wonder if physicians are really up to that. But anyway, so it's talking about what the health sector could do and the importance of improving society. Remember that earlier today we were told that our longevity has increased 30 years, but only 5 years of that is due directly to health. So there are lots of other things having to do with society that are obviously important to health. And then there's this idea of medicine writ large. You may wonder how it is that I'm teaching a course called Technology and the Future of Medicine, but yet people who have no training in medicine whatsoever are taking that course. How does that work? Well, it's because of this idea of medicine writ large. So, medicine writ large also is an idea first spoken of by Rudolf Virchow in 1848. Medicine is a social science. Politics is nothing other than medicine writ large. Medicine as a social science, as the science of human beings, has the obligation to point out problems and to attempt their theoretical solution. The politician, the practical anthropologist, must find the means for their practical solution. And I think this has a lot to do with global health. As you look at health around the world, very often it is the case that targeted intervention dealing only with diseases and therapies would do practically nothing unless it is somehow a part of larger intervention having to do with larger societal factors. So the course that I teach, it has 50-minute lectures, 20-minute discussion. We have this camera that does a combination of video, and that camera has a software algorithm. So it's automatically taking still pictures, and it's a good way to test the success of any session. Some sessions we get hundreds of pictures because we get smiles that the camera likes and hand gestures that the camera likes. Other sessions we get zero. So it's always, we can see what the people like, but it's also important what the machines like. And as you think about it, over the next 30 years, there'll be more and more situations where we actually care what the machines think. You may not have thought about that before. And the video and audio quality was absolutely the pits in the beginning. You can see how unpleasant it appears to be for the people back in 2011. And you see here the laughing face of Catherine Solez right there, obviously having a great time in our ideal circumstance now. taking the course, giving the online presentations where you end up with a 20-minute YouTube presentation can have an awesome life-changing effect for young people. Aisha Harian, 3 days after her talk went up, she got this awesome job offer. She didn't even know that the company existed or that this possibility existed. So it really shows you the new dynamic in the world that's possible through technology. We shoot broadcast quality video of each lecture and discussion. You can look at it all. You could spend the rest of your life watching all the videos from the course on youtube.com/user/Kim Solez. The course website is singularitycourse.com. We talk about existential risk, things that could kill off the whole human race, artificial intelligence, genomics, nanotech, ways to optimize positive outcome for humanity, the co-evolution of humans and machines, and the influence of these considerations on medicine of the future. With the Dean of Science, the Dean of Arts, we're working on some other deans to present it. It's really fun. I think we have the best and the brightest students. We have both undergrads and graduate students from all different faculties, business, arts, medicine, science, so on. And believe it or not, we teach about global health problems. We have a lecture about Nepal. I helped to create a new medical school there. And that's the subject of one of the talks in the course. We also have it as a medical student elective. There are a number of innovations. One is the use of the flipped classroom, where the students watch videos before they come, and the whole class period is then them asking the lecturer questions. Is there any other course like this in the world? There is only one, and it's in Budapest, Hungary. And we have active collaboration with the 30-year-old guy who runs that. Is very interesting MD, PhD running that course called Disruptive Technologies in Medicine. It's the only other course in the world like that. Okay, back to Future Day. So we're trying to think, well, how do we reach people about these considerations? And the idea of a new holiday really appealed. It did not begin as my idea, but in 2012 I was aware of the idea, and so there was an Edmonton contingent. It was small but energetic. And in 2012, Future Day on March 1st was celebrated in 16 cities around the world. You can see the names there: Melbourne, Sydney, Hong Kong, so on. Now you might think, because I'm talking about exponential change, that I'm going to tell you the next year there was 64, and but that's not what happened. It's kind of a shrinking initiative, and there seem to be fewer people celebrating this each year, and so we have become just about the only city. In 2014, there were about 5 places. Right now, today, it looks like it will be similar. Probably you can count the number of places celebrating this holiday, but we're also the only place where we are celebrating it in a way that is actually trying to make it into a practical holiday. Everybody else is saying, oh my goodness, it's Future Day, what should we do? And we're trying to say, well, how would you make this into a real holiday? Well, a real holiday has to have visual identity, branding, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Holi festival in the Asian subcontinent. It seemed to me that's something most people here have not experienced, and it's just one particular thing. It's the sprinkling of pigments on people. You probably haven't been in a circumstance quite like this. And I don't know that this is for us, but this idea of something very colorful appeals to me. Any of you who've been to my Facebook page will know that there's only ever been one poem there, not written by me, and it's this poem called the Crayola Bomb. Maybe we should develop a Crayola bomb as our next secret weapon, a happiness weapon, a beauty bomb. And every time a crisis developed, we would launch one. It would explode high in the air, explode softly, and send thousands, millions of little parachutes into the air, floating down to earth, boxes of Crayolas. And we wouldn't go cheap either. Boxes of 64 with a sharpener built right in, with silver and gold and copper, magenta and peach and lime and amber and umber and all the rest. And the people would smile and get a funny look on their faces and cover the world with imagination. If that doesn't do it for you, did you know that if you do a time lapse of your Roomba robotic vacuum cleaner, you end up with this sort of colorful picture? You can also get something equally colorful with hot air balloons. Anyway, this was a picture of our Future Day Celebration 2014. And many of you may know that there was an article in the Edmonton Journal about this. And you may think that that would help me get students for the course, but you're absolutely wrong, because students do not read the papers. So, I mean, I reached a lot of older people, and they thought that this was really cool, but I don't really think it helped. So it's a question then. Probably a lot of you are feeling resistance to the ideas that I've presented, and that's normal, because these are rather unusual ideas, and they suggest that eventually humans will not be in charge. And actually that's different from what you probably always thought, that humans would always be in charge. So it's a very interesting question. How are we going to get more people working on this, thinking about it? And to have a long reading list doesn't work. A lot of the more active people online are actually not reading anything. They're criticizing books without reading them, and they're often very vehement about that. And so it's frustrating when that happens, but it's real life. So what's the worst you could think of that could be the consequence of that? So there was this site, internetevolution.com, ThinkerNet blog, and it was a site on which I had a lot of text and video blogs, and it also had a lot of discussions, very animated discussions, by people who had read nothing in that field. And so on March 7th, 2014, IBM, which was the sponsor of the site, shut the entire thing down permanently. And so that makes me different from any speaker you've ever had speak to you ever in your life. Any other speaker, no matter what their background, their CV was growing. I mean, it may have been growing slowly, may have been growing rapidly, but on March 7th, my CV lost 57 items. IBM pulled the plug. Had you thought of in this electronic world of that sort of thing being possible? Those things are not coming back. Luckily for me, they sort of represent juvenilia, like those videos are not as good as the videos I'm doing now, and those blogs are not, but they're gone. So I lost 57 items from my CV at that moment. The main thing that I'm known for is the Banff classification of transplant pathology. And so you may wonder how that's been changed by technology. It's something that I developed in '91. And so at a meeting this coming July, a lot of Edmonton young people and I are working on sort of what is the next phase of this, which is stem cell generated organs and the pathologic changes that will be created therein, because they will not be normal. There will be as many diseases, if you will, or abnormalities created when you start making organs from stem cells as all the natural diseases that we know of today. So it's a very intriguing thing now to think of modifying the transplant pathology field to have it include now the tissue engineering pathology of the future, because that will be a very real feature. And so, yeah, it's really cool. You can take an organ, infuse it with detergent, remove all the cells, put in new cells, and it turns pink, and wow, isn't that cool? But those cells don't always know exactly where to go, and they don't always function well, and there are a whole host of shortcuts they may take where the organ doesn't really work all that well or doesn't know what to do. So there are tremendous intellectual challenges. And one of the interesting things about that, like it says down here, many old-fashioned questions. So in the learning of medical subjects, you're often faced with things that you regard as fashionable in the past and no longer relevant today. But actually, a lot of those old-fashioned concepts apply again to the stem cell-generated organ, because it will have many rather simple problems that have to do with the physiology, for instance, that we were commonly talking about in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we have created something, the Banff Foundation for Allograft Pathology. We will be modifying that so that tissue engineering becomes part of that. And this should not be, for transplant pathologists, something beyond us. It's something within our realm, and many old-fashioned ideas will become relevant again. And what about artificial intelligence? Well, there are systems for virtual microscopy, so that rather than a real microscope, you have sort of a computer-based microscope. You can scan slides and have a computerized image. That is actually better than the real microscope and the real slide. But what happens when that system wakes up? Don't you think that will happen, that my virtual microscopy assistant that's helping me with analyzing the slides that I'm looking at is one day going to wake up and say, "Hey, Dr. Solez, haven't you noticed you've been making a lot of mistakes recently? Don't you think I could do it better?" And you know, we all assume in this room that machine telling you, "Don't you think I can do it better," is not going to happen in our own realm, in our own life. And I assure you that in my profession it will, and I think it will in yours also. So there's then a new job, because robots need people they can trust. And so there will be ways to decide which people they can trust and which ones they can't. And that will actually be another way to look at life. You can prepare yourself to be a robot liaison, advocate, the best human friend a robot ever had. You may be thinking, but we can just unplug them. But don't you think that's the first thing that they will learn? They will learn how to do wireless power. They'll learn how to not be unplugged. And ultimately, what will really be meaningful is when machines, when robots have memories, real memories like we do. And you remember Roy Batty in the Blade Runner talking about all the things that he remembered that would be lost as he reached the end of his life. So that's the point at which there'll be all sorts of interesting ethical discussions about the rights that robots have and how those rights compare to the rights of humans. So I'm interested in your suggestions of how to capture the imagination of the public to start everybody thinking and talking about these matters. We need the mainstream public to regard the singularity as fact, not fiction. We need to promote organized thinking about the future in universities and beyond. We need to make efforts to make singularitarianism accessible and inclusive with low barrier to entry, incorporating young people and also figuring out how to include those young people who do not read any books, who are strongly opinionated but read nothing, because there are people like that. We can't pretend that everybody is going to read our reading assignment. So the singularity for dummies, yeah, there needs to be such a book. There also needs to be a way to deal with the situation of people who really don't want to do a lot of reading. Rome wasn't built in a day, so this won't happen overnight. But the end result could be something very positive. Ubiquitous health, the end of war, peace, happiness everywhere, eternal youth. You know, the sci-fi author Isaac Asimov, until shortly before his death at 72, referred to himself as being in my late youth. And this might be the case for all of you. A similar situation faces all of us, but the youth will continue well beyond age 72. Enhanced communications brought about by technology will be an important part of what sustains it. So in other words, just to simplify things, the boundaries, the limits that you woke up today and thought about and thought, you know, I wish I could, but I can't. Those boundaries, those limits in the future will probably not be there. So it actually becomes very important what you aspire to do, because you're likely to be able to do what you aspire to do in the future. So in many areas of importance in the future, the boundaries, the limits you're thinking of just may not exist. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so we have time for a couple of questions. Hi, my name's Tom. As a photographer and a videographer, have you guys, do you know if there are any documentaries on Singularity and whether you guys are pursuing one?
Yeah, there are. Not to go into great length about this, but Singularity University, where I did the 9-day executive course, they have gone to a kind of California entity, and they have bought up, they have incorporated, they've acquired most other entities. They're doing documentaries, they already have done some. Yes, there are several out there. There are DVDs you can get. Yeah, if you search, you'll be able to find them. One advantage our course has is that we have technology skeptics teaching in it too. And so we have the whole range of opinions. You won't easily find that out there. So that we have taken that approach from the very beginning because we thought that a course that only has technology advocates is simply not valid because there is another side to it. So Bibiana Kujek, Earl Waugh, Catherine Sauvé, lots of people who've taken part in our course are to some extent technology skeptics. And I think you need to hear both sides and the middle. You need the whole spectrum. We say that in the course, we guarantee you that we're teaching you exactly what the future will be like because we talk about many different scenarios. You just don't know which of those scenarios it will be, but one of them it will be for sure.
Maybe we should talk about this later, but what do you think about creating like a video series on like different possible futures? Because that way then, if you're talking about like people who don't read books, right?
Yeah.
Maybe how we engage with them is we create videos.
Yeah. So we have a large number of videos, several hundred now, and the viewership seems to go up to about 3,000. We've never exceeded that. The Dean of Science has the top drawing video there. So in a sense, we are doing what you talk about. We haven't targeted it specifically in that way, but every speaker has a different take on what the future scenarios are. So in a sense, we are doing exactly that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's take something much more practical. In 2011, I was really interested in octopus intellect, octopus intelligence. And I was going to get to and so on. And I realized that this would make my life absolutely chaotic mess because they were already able to, outsmart me. They can go through any hole as long as the hole is bigger than the eye. They can play all sorts of tricks on people. So that's just one example that not only do I think that machines can, outsmart me, there are many other animals that also can. So yes, I do think this is going to happen. Now, you can argue about the time frame, but I don't think you can argue about whether it's going to happen. In other words, whether it's going to happen in 2045, I can't be absolutely certain. But you'll know, because you'll be around.
No, I was going to argue that, don't you think humans are the ones that input this technology into technology? They make this technology. So at the end of the day, I feel like it's humans that are making this technology.
Yeah, but the whole idea here is that these machines will be able to self-improve. They won't need us for that. And they're already sort of able to do that. If you look at machine learning, one of the concepts there is that machine learning is kind of a black box. You can't look at the formula for exactly how the machine is doing what it's doing, and it can learn how to do it better. It can learn how to aggregate it, so on. So there's already that. We don't have to wait for it. It already exists. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think it's a good thing that there are enough organ donors right now? Because if there are, then that means the mortality rate is going to be high. So do you think that's a good thing that we create different forms of organ donors?
Question I think is it feasible in society that suddenly the wish to donate would increase so so much that we'd have tenfold more donors. That appears that that's not going to happen. Human society just doesn't work like that. You know, the best case scenario doesn't get even close. So there's always going to be this huge gap that, you know, transplantation is great, but it only reaches 1 in 10 of the people who need it. But these other modalities will reach everybody. And as long as we keep them, you know, affordable, then we really have something. Yeah.
Sorry, my name is Ken. First of all, thank you so much for coming in today. Your talk is really interesting. And your class is something I would like to take, but unfortunately my schedule would not permit. So you were talking about other ways to reach youth. Have you ever thought of making a podcast?
Well, the videos, I mean, you can experience the whole course without ever coming to class. Every class session is there, including the student. You can become a fan of, you know, Catherine Sauvé and so on. 3D Cutty Cat, yeah. So you can not only experience all the lecturers, but also all of, you know, the students. So through YouTube, just youtube.com/user/Kim Solez. You'll find it all there. So yeah, you never have to have any personal contact with me at all.
Here for you.
Oh my goodness.
There it is.
It's great.
Right there.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.